Even though she's managed to form a romantic bond with the gardener Jamie, Danny is still finding more and more questions during her extended stay at Bly Manor. Who keeps crank-calling the estate? Who is this mysterious man named Peter Quint, and what did he have to do with the death of the previous governess, Rebecca Jessel? What is behind Miles' sudden and irrational change in temperament? Who is telling this story, and who is behind the haunting of Bly Manor? So, yeah, I actually meant to do this on Monday, but instead I'm doing it on Tuesday. Monday kind of got away from me again, but still, I did manage to complete the entire miniseries, I guess, of The Haunting of Bly Manor, and I think it did a good job of improving overall. It's still very solid. It did a good job with character development. I think the plot twists are nicely laid in. There are some really good episodes exploring some of the characters' personal motivations throughout everything, and it does seem that like I said, it does a good job until the end, and it doesn't really fall apart at the end. It's just the ending suddenly starts getting a little too drawn out. Like, apparently they may have thought they had 9 parts, but then they realized maybe they only had about 7. Exactly, but unfortunately they were contracted for 9 and had to do 9. And that's really what screams this out. I'll try to spare the big story point spoilers at the end. But yeah, we get to a point where everything seems to be nicely wrapped up, and then you realize there's still a half an hour to go on this thing. It's like, uh-oh. Yeah, so, yeah, again, we start getting more and more peelbacks in this. Like, the second episode is about Henry and him getting expelled from boarding school, and it was kind of strange because it's like he went from just being this quiet kid to suddenly, like I said, acting irrational. He jumped out of a tree to try to get kicked out. It didn't work. And finally, he killed the class pet, and that got him expelled. And basically what happened was, after Miss Jessel, the previous governess, took her own life, Flora wrote him and said, hey, come home, and he basically heeded that call. And you get a little, and then from there we kind of get a bit more as to what happened with Ms. Jessel and her relationship with this man named Peter Quint, who is an employee of the uncle Henry Wingrave. And like I said, Rebecca and Peter got into a relationship. They were fooling around a lot. They fooled around in the parents' bedroom, which is kind of a no-no, obviously. And we get, and then Peter says, well, I've got this one plan, but we have to do it right. And then he mysteriously vanished, and then she took her life. But then there's a little bit more to it than that, and we get more layers into it. Like, you think, oh, and Peter's just this kind of jerky, jackass guy who kind of, fooled, naive, young adult in Rebecca. But no, there actually was kind of some genuine caring there, and you do get some of the reasons behind his motivations as well. That it's not all necessarily ill-informed. And then we get even more deep into that, and we get some revelations about the uncle and why he's so inattentive, and you get a bit of there's actually a point where he's confronted. I'll put out one of the big revelations here is that it turns out that Henry, the uncle, is actually the father of Flora. He and the mother Charlotte, had been carrying on an affair for some time, and they tried to cover it up by saying that Flora was a premature birth. But eventually, Dominic, the brother and father of Miles, pieced it together. He said, she was supposed to be born like a month early, but she was in remarkable health and looked really good. And it doesn't make any sense. And then I pieced together that you lied to me, and the only guy who's been around here is Henry. That's kind of how it all, you, right in the episode when you see this kind of flashback to Flora's birth, and you see that Henry is almost as anxious as Dominic, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm guessing he either A, has always been in love with Charlotte and it's been unrequited, or B, they've been having an affair. And then literally about 5 minutes later, Flora actually walks in on them fooling around. So yeah, you kind of get that little inlay. And then when Dominic finds out, he confronts Henry and he basically says, we're leaving, you could still run this law firm that we've run together, but you're not part of the family anymore. You're not allowed at the manor anymore. You are not allowed to interact with Flora anymore. She is my daughter, not yours. Yeah, I am cutting you out of my life, and I am leaving you alone with your shit-eating self. And then they go on this trip. The parents go on this trip and to India, where they're killed mysteriously. And immediately ever since then, Henry is basically tortured by a vision of himself with this big shit-eating grin on his face. So yeah, like I said, that was a really well done story. And then there's another revelation. Like I said, there are people who are dead that don't realize they're dead. I won't get too far into that, but still, like that's an actual plot point in here too. And you get some good character development with. Again, with Danny, her backstory is that she was engaged to a guy, but she sort of felt like it was like a responsibility. Like they had been friends forever, and they became They were childhood sweethearts. But as the wedding began to approach, she started to feel like something was wrong, and you actually get this little brief glimpse with, the dressmaker who's fitting her. And you could tell that she's more excited by the female dressmaker touching her than anything that she's had with Edmund, the fiance. And so she breaks it off with Edmund, but as they're sort of arguing over it, he gets struck by a car and is killed. And she sort of blames herself for that, and that's what she's been running from. And of course, as this is playing out, we get a parallel to her developing this relationship with Jamie, who's the gardener at Bly Manor estate. And again, like you could tell that she wants to be with her, but she's afraid. And it does lead to kind of a weird plot cul-de-sac where she confronts Edmund's ghost, who has been appearing to her the whole time. But then Edmund just kind of vanishes. And we then get a little bit more, like I said, we get more with Peter and Rebecca, and that they've discovered that they can basically transfer their souls into the children, and they want to basically enter and stay there the whole time. And Peter has basically said, hey, this will free us, because they're trapped in this sort of loop. When you're a ghost in the manor, you're trapped in this loop where you can interact with the people there in the present for some time, but then suddenly there's this knock on the door and you get transported back to this moment in your past. And for Peter, it's him getting confronted with the darkness of his past. For Rebecca, it's this moment with her and Peter. For one of the other characters, it's when they meet this other character that they were in love with. And you kind of see that start to play out too. And basically, Peter pieces together, hey, if we can, because he does briefly enter Miles at one point, because the two had slowly bonded a little bit. Peter was making frequent trips to visit Rebecca, and so you kind of get that. Basically, what happened with Peter is he was stealing from the Wingraves. He had embezzled, I think, 200,000 pounds from the company, and then he had stolen a antique necklace that belonged to Charlotte, the mother. But then, as he was trying to leave, his ghost confronted him, and then suddenly one of the ghosts came out and killed him. And then we get the backstory of this ghost. And Peter, still, because he's trapped in the manor, he manages to get back in contact with Rebecca. And he thinks that maybe he can try to free them, and by possessing Rebecca and wandering her and killing her by drowning her in the lake. It doesn't really work though, and they're still kind of trapped in this loop, and they keep getting separated. They keep doing what's called dream hopping, where they can hop into the children's dreams briefly. And so Peter puts in motion this plan to basically possess the children, and hey, maybe that can get us out of this. And that's kind of what leads to the big climax. And then right as that climax is building, we then get this whole backstory subplot as to what was going on and who is responsible for all these ghosts haunting. And it goes all the way back to, like, I want to say the 1700s or so. And the original family that owned Bly Manor, who were called the Willoughbys, and they're these two daughters named Viola and Perdita, and they, as you get kind of their sort of the falling apart of their relationship as Viola marries this man, and because they're trying to keep control of the manor, they're daughters, so they're not allowed to own property back then, and so they kind of try to get into this arranged marriage, and you kind of see how that falls apart, especially when Viola gets sick, and so you get a little bit of how that's going on, but then we jump back to the present, the final episode, and we start seeing how this all comes together and how they're trying to avoid everything, and how they eventually settle things, and then there's a half an hour left to go in the whole episode. So we get this big epilogue, and, well, it's not bad, it's really unnecessary. Again, the backstory stuff, while not bad, I wouldn't call it entirely unnecessary, but it's a little too drawn out. So yeah, it gets a little too padded out at the end, and just for my taste. But still, this was really enjoyable. I really liked this. I thought it was really well done. I am going to give it a B. Again, I'm just going to keep it at the B level. Like I said, there's some points where it spins the tires a little bit, and the ending is just way too padded out for its own good. There are a couple of revelations at the end that I won't get into, but yeah, they're kind of nice, especially when you find out who it is who's actually telling the story and how it turns out. But still, like I said, it's very good, very solid, very enjoyable.
Look! The map's inside that scary dark island!
Wait for me, boys!
Whoa, the map!
And blue treasure! Oh, look! Yummy Blue Loops!
Here for a limited time, Fruit Loops cereal now with Blue Loops, part of this nutritious breakfast.
You used to be afraid of the dark.
Yay! A ghost! And he took our Fruit Loops with Blue Loops!
But where?
Find out for yourself at fruitloops.ca and help solve the mystery.
I found a clue!
Okay, so the next video up is going to be the review of the first episode of Hellstrom. Then the next video after that should be the random trade review on New Avengers Volume 4, The Collective. And probably in between that, or after that, it'll be the rest of the review of the Season 1 of Hellstrom. And then the next movie, and in this case will be an actual movie, will be Over the Moon, a Netflix movie. So, see you all next time. Hey guys, remember, you can help support my channel at patreon.com/SleepyTimeForCat Productions, where you can help request a movie, even if it's something like, say, Sonic the Hedgehog or the next Purge film. I'll review it.